We're live.
Oh, we're live now. Hello, everyone. This is technology. Happy Monday. We are live with the Mom Link. My co-partner Debbie Dowling Waba is here, and then we also have a special guest today, Shelly Jean Larson. I'm super excited to have this conversation. Hope everyone had a great Monday. I am MaryKim, and we're excited to bring. We've been absent for the last 2 weeks, but we are back and ready to go full stream. So Shelly Jean, so she is going to share with us a little bit about her journey, her story from the tipping industry to becoming. And so I'm super excited. I am American Farkas. I do many things. I'm all about empowering women. I know that the moment that we empower our women with self-worth and self-empowerment, we get to water the next generation. And as we do that, we change the trajectory of our communities, our children, and our co-partners, our life. Because, women, hate to tell it to you, men, we birth kids, but outside of that, we usually are the leaders in our homes, in our communities, and we actually can decide how others treat us. And so that comes with so much with how we feel about ourselves. So I'm all about let's empower our women, because once we learn something, we automatically will share it with the next one. So this is how we change the world. Debbie, introduce yourself, and then we'll let Shelly introduce herself, and we're gonna have like an amazing conversation.
Well, thank you. And I apologize for my technical difficulties, but we're just going to roll with this today. Anyway, my name is Debbie Dowling Waba, and I am the founder of Anxiously Overcoming, where I help women to ditch the stress and anxiety so they can get back to doing the things they love. And it's just a passion of mine because for the majority of my adult life, I have had anxiety. So I've learned many tools, tips, tricks so that you can manage it and be in the situations and do all the things you were used to doing, but maybe you had to stop because anxiety was holding you back. And we don't want that to hold you back. So with further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Shelly Jean. And Shelly Jean, if you would introduce yourself, that would be awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor for sure. I too am a mom. I'm a mom of three adults and I have three grandchildren. My daughter has a 10-year-old, and my son has two boys, one that's just turned 6, one that turned 4. And it's my absolutely greatest pleasure on earth is to be their Grammy and Nana. And it has been a journey. And I was talking with Debbie actually last week, and I was like, oh my gosh, I never put a label on the things that I had been feeling and the things that like have kept me from doing things or in my own family. And that has been anxiety. And I was like, oh my God, it was like a really big moment. And I really find that when we put, we can find a label or put that label on something, then we can really get through it and access it and really begin to change and transform that. So I am an instant gratification crusher in the tipping industry. And why do I say that? I've been in the hospitality industry since I've been 18 years old. I am 63 years old. And I left an industry that I was in for 17 and a half years, a broken millionaire. I didn't have the people, I didn't have the strategies, I didn't have the know how on where to go and where to put my money. And every single day, I knowingly knew going into my profession that I would come out banking, right, on some serious cash. And so, but I didn't know where to put it. So I just spent it. We always had brand new cars. My kids always had all the newest, latest, greatest things. We had a roof over our head. I wasn't on welfare. I wasn't, on food stamps or any of those things. I was a very self-sufficient mom. And when people asked me what my profession was, I would just tell them that I was in the entertainment industry, and nobody ever questioned that. So that became the story that I told myself and my kids so that my kids too wouldn't get retaliated. So what was it that I did? I was a topless dancer in the adult entertainment industry. And it has only been in the last 2 years that I've really fully come to be really open about that. And this is a very pivotal moment for a lot of people in my industry, as I'm super excited to really get into that and share with them, because we've been told a lot of lies, and I tell a lot of lies thinking that I'm only telling like half truths, but really are the lies. And so that's really how this whole conversation got started today, how I was invited on this show, because there are really a lot of lies that are told to us. And it really does affect every single person in our circle of influence, affluence, and especially our families. So that's where we're at today. So thank you.
I love that, Shelly. Labels. I don't like the word label. I never really resonated with it, but so much more since I've been a mom now of my 10-year-old boy with Down syndrome. Because he wears his label on his face because he has Down syndrome. You can see it in his eyes and his face. And so much of that label puts us all in a box. And I love that you shared that you grew up, right? You were surrounded by lies that you were told. And I think every single one that's listening on this call will have that experience. I'm turning 51. I only share that because this generation, and if you're around my age, and it actually happens in kids who are in high school today, right? Because it's generation from generation. These lies, these stories are passed down, right? Thinking that it's okay and it's not, right? So I truly believe the moment that we own whatever it is, right? And we hold to whatever that is, whether you were part of it, you were in it, but you were affected by it, then you actually, once you own it, you have the power to decide what to do with it. It is no longer that person that told you, right? That person that hurt you. You totally have that control. So I love that you're sharing, Shelly, because it's women like you, me, Debbie, and anyone else that's speaking out on the truth, right? Outside of what may come from that, really opens the doors for others. They may never speak or say anything on their story, but what happens is they know that they're not alone. And that is super powerful. So, Shelly, I'm so excited about this conversation. And thank you again for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
And for me, I've known Shelly for a while now, and I know the person that she is, and I've heard her story. And I'm inspired by it because most people would just crawl up into a ball and hide from the rest of the world because of shame or embarrassment or the lies that they told themselves. And Shelly is absolutely not doing that. And she's bringing power back to the community where they don't even realize that the power exists. So I'm really looking forward to this whole conversation. And I'm so excited that you're here, Shelly.
Thank you. That for me too is I want this industry to be heroes of their own stories. I do want them to be empowered with the tools and the people that they can walk away from an industry, or even just begin right now to start investing really in themselves and to really empower themselves to walk away from even in the serving industry. And I'm talking the tippers, the servers at your local restaurants, or the bus people, that whole industry of people that really make money instantly and do that instant gratification. And that's what I want to crush. And that's the beginning of where this whole story is taking place.
I love it. I love it. Since we're talking about mindset, right? It's about mindset, mental health, breaking stigmas, whatever that is. So this is my opinion, right? And of course, Shelly, you've been in the industry. So at a young age, I know on my schooling, I wanted, after high school, all I wanted to do was get a degree and start making money so I can get out of my parents' house. So my mindset was like, whatever it takes. And it was paying for my own college, working 3 jobs, and graduating at 19 and getting a career in New York City in the fashion industry at 19 years old. That was my drive. That was my mindset. So I'd love if you could share, because your industry is different than mine, right? Not that it's less or anything, right? But there's a lot of stigmas, right, around the adult community jobs, let's say, right? And so how did you, at a young age, you said at 18, like, what was your mindset? What drove you to decide to do that outside? Like, your purpose was bigger than what was around you.
So this is going to be interesting for you, because when I was 18 years old, I didn't even have any plan or any purpose. I was drinking, doing drugs, partying, hanging with my friends, and that's all we did. And I worked, paycheck to paycheck. And again, I didn't come from a family that had goals. Like, I came from a very domestic violent household where we were in survival mode. It was drama and trauma, right? I didn't even have anybody in my circle of influence that even went to college, that even went to a community college. Like, I didn't have any aspirations of doing anything other than just getting through this moment. Like, and I realized too in the last couple of years, I was like, oh my, I still function that way. Like, I'm in this today moment, I'm in this moment, and my goals aren't really so far ahead. And I didn't even start dancing until I was 29 years old. So I'd already had my kids, and I went into an industry where a girlfriend of mine, who is still to this day my very good friend, had talked me into doing a couple of shows. Where I'm originally from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and she's like, "Girl, we can be making some money. We can like, I could." And she's a great choreographer. She's amazing. And so she wanted to put together this all-female girl troupe for us to go out and dance at these major events. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like you got to be joking. I've never done anything like that in my life." But the money at that time was really appealing. And I was like, okay, so we did it, and my very first time ever introduced to dancing was in Winter, South Dakota for pheasant season. There's a bar there, and we came and I've never made so much money in my life at one time. I was like, oh, what just happened? And so we did it a few more times, and then I'm like, you know what, I can't do this. Like, this just definitely is not for me. Well, then I'm a single mom. I don't have a boyfriend or anything with me, and I can understand why people get into this industry. When you come to your back is up against the wall and you've got children and you're trying to work a regular job, these jobs are not going to pay for your childcare, second, all your food is not happening. And so it's very easy to get into the service industry or into the adult industry. Now, I don't know anything about the porn industry, so let's just be very clear about that. I came into the topless industry. I walked into when I was 29 years old. There's a beautiful, gorgeous, stunning club called Solid Gold in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I came up just to take a look, and the guy that recruited me into that club, I thought he had lost his flipping mind. Like, literally, I walked in this club and I'm like, never been in anything like this either. It's total glam, and there's this beautiful, gorgeous chandelier in the middle of the room, and everyone's dressed to a T. And we talked about fashion. These girls were runway models. I am not exaggerating. I was like, oh my gosh, I come from, Sioux Falls, South Dakota is a small city. We don't dress like that there, right? So it was a whole different game for me. And I was like, there's no way I can do this. And, again, as in anything in your life, there's a whole group of that surrounding people who are like, oh, we have faith in you, you can do it. Just try it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't like anything like these girls. There was no way I felt a 10. I felt like a 3 in a world of 10s, right? And I felt like a 10 where I came from, but definitely not here. And I don't know where the echo's coming from, you guys. I'm sorry.
Debbie, close it. Yeah.
There we go. Is that better? Yes. So then I was like, oh, okay. So I tried it for one day. One day turned into 2 days turned into a week. And I walked away from there saying, I'm moving to Minnesota. And my thought process was I was going to move here for a year and just take care of my family, pay off all my debt, and then take and go back to South Dakota. I've been here for 38 years. I never left. And I spent 17 and a half years in that very club. I became one of their elite girls. I transformed, did all the things. It was one of those ugly duckling things from even school turned swan is how I describe it. And I became one of their top entertainers for 3 years. People absolutely loved me. Now, in the world of dancing, too, in topless or even nude, I couldn't do the nude thing. That was like, no, I didn't care about my top, and I saw more of that at the beach. So I was like, who crapping cares about that? Like that was my thought process. So I'm like, I'm just showing, my stuff for some money. And I'm like, no one's touching me. Like this club in the beginning was like you couldn't touch, there was no touching, absolutely no touching allowed. The guys wore tuxedo or not tuxedos, but suit and ties. Like it was like VIP treatment. You walked up on a red carpet, you walked in this beautiful building, you saw tents, like everything was golds and velvets. And I mean, it was spectacular. And so anyway, I then brought my family. And again, I've been here for 38 years now. The lifespan of an entertainer is usually 7.5 years. So I made it 17 and a half. So kind of the standing joke too, between me and all my friends is that I could have made it into the Guinness Book of World Records. Like who does that? Nobody, it was like, that just is unheard of. But that's how committed I was to my family. And this is the piece that people don't really understand is that the group of girls, especially that I was with and the group of guys, all had came in for obviously different reasons, but most of them were going to school. Like they were putting themselves through school. And I want to share one piece, if I may, that maybe can really, really solidify this industry, that we're not all bad people, that we're not all prostitutes and hookers and all the things that this gives a bad name to, is the girls that I was in there with. When my son was supposed to be a painter, and 18 years old, he's working with his friend who was his boss, and they were at an apartment complex, and the boss, our friend, needed help getting debris off the roof. They were taking care of this apartment building. So he had gone up on the roof, him and his friend. It's a Monday morning, and I get a phone call that says, ma'am, we have your son at the hospital. We're in the emergency room. How soon can you get here? And I was like, oh my gosh. Now let me tell you, my kids come up with stories all the time. They're always at the hospital for some dumb thing or another, for doing stupid crap. So I was in no hurry to get there. And actually I was mad. So I'm like, are you joking? Like, this is Monday morning and you're calling me to go to the emergency room? Like, I was furious. So I'm taking my time, and then all of a sudden our friend calls and says, we really need you to get to the hospital right now. And I'm like, what? And he's like, Jesse fell off the roof and we think he's paralyzed. And I said, what'd you say? And then I'm like, and I'm still not really comprehending what's happening. But the reason the nurse didn't tell me that, because I have to drive to the hospital, and they don't want me, they want me to focus on driving. So anyway, I get to the hospital, and sure enough, there's my son. He's laying there. He's got tubes running in and out of him everywhere. And he had fallen off the roof. He had hit a retaining wall, broke his back, and it paralyzed him from his nipples down. So, and I just remember, like, I'm in shock, and I look at him, and he just looks up at me, and he's like, Mom, I'm okay. Like, it's going to be okay. And I'm like, no, it isn't. Like, are you kidding me right now? So we spent the next 3 months in the hospital. And when I tell you, every single Friday, my manager from that club walked in with a wad of money from all of the people in my industry, in my building, that came together to take care of us. And he would throw it on the bed and go, we love you so much. Take all the time you need. You guys just get well. And I'm like, so I want you to know the heart and the soul of these incredible, beautiful beings, because if it wasn't for them, I never would have made it through that time. We would have lost our house. We would have lost everything, because I wasn't able to get there. I was taking care of my child. And so this piece of the story is my link always to just what a fabulous group of people they are, how wonderful they are. And so I want to take away that negative connotation that we're all these rotten people, because we're not. We are moms, and we are providing for our kids. And some people may not like how it happens, and they might, may not like, and yes, there are those that do create those names for us, like that. That is how it is, but that's in any realm of all of us. You got your good people, you got your bad people. And the people I definitely had the pleasure of are amazing. Still, a lot of them are my friends. And what I found interesting though is that in this journey, again, because I didn't know, this is how naive I was, is we had millionaires on a daily basis come into this club. We have politicians, we have football players, we had hockey people. Like this was the elitist of the elitist clubs, right, in our area. I never once asked about what they did for a living. I never once asked how they invested their money. I never once asked any of that because I didn't know. Like I had no idea. I just knew that I was there to make my money and I'm just going to make you feel as special as possible. And that is what I did. So, when this saying goes, we may never, sometimes we may not remember people's names, but we do remember how you make them feel. That's who I was. Like people that walked into that club always knew without a doubt that you were special to me. It didn't matter who you were. And people would come back either year after year or they come back month after month. I had what was called regulars, on a regular weekly basis. And so did the other girls because that's where our heart was. So it I just want to change the stigma around a lot of it. But again, there are a lot of girls that make that bad name for us, but there's also a lot of guys too that make that bad name for us too. So it's just kind of a full circle thing. I think Mary like froze on us over there.
She may have, but and your story really touches me because I think that a lot of times people do get the misconception of what an adult entertainer is, and they have those stigmas of they're on drugs, they're hookers, they're this. They don't realize that there are women out there that are doing this, and men too, that are doing this to support their family, that don't want to be on welfare, that don't want to have to use other means to get in there. So I think that that's very telling of your character, and you should be proud of what you did because you did what you had to do for your kids. And they don't see the other side of, like, when your son was in the hospital, how they came together as a community to help you. And I think that people don't realize that it is a community and you are supporting each other, and there's going to be bad apples in every single profession. In sports, how many times do we see articles about what these pro athletes are doing that, based on our own morals, we wouldn't do? So I think it comes down to a lot of that. And I think that you really touched my heart. And I know I've heard your story before, but today I'm hearing even more. And I'm so proud of you for stepping out and taking on this role to help others realize that there's more beyond it and there's a deeper meaning.
Thank you. Yeah, and like I said, it's sometimes when you get backed up into a corner, you're just going to do what you got to do to make money. So then that's where I see a lot of the girls come into this industry, and that's where I see the guys come in, and again serving the service industry. Again, we're all part of the same. We make our money in a day, right? And so we can go back and go. I can remember going, okay, I need to make X amount of dollars tomorrow to pay my rent. I knew I needed to go in and bust my butt and make it happen. you know and then it also comes to, like, there was girls in the gear, like I said, we're going to college. There was one I want to specifically say, she went to college to be a NICU nurse, so she came in and worked with all the preemie babies, so it's like we all have our stories. And this is what I'm saying. I want people to go into this industry to know that they can be heroes of their own stories, because they can, for whatever reason they got involved. I know that there's some, again, just bad things, that sex trafficking, that kind of thing. There's all of that too. But that's not what we're talking about today. I'm just here to humanize who we are. And here's the biggest caveat to all this is what we did. It's not who we are. That's the difference. So when you talk about label MaryKim, that's exactly it. It's like these people that label us, prostitutes and hookers and all that. It's like, that is so unfair, because that is not true. And then two, I want to share a story about my son in baseball. And this is the thing I love too, that I love this story so much. So my kids were involved in all the sports because I was able to do that. And that's what I loved about my job too. I was an independent contractor. So I could come in, and now I've been there long enough too. I can come and go pretty much as I please. So I never came in until like 8 o'clock at night. A lot of the times you had to be there like at 5. Well, my kids were involved in all these sports, and one weekend my son was he was in baseball. This is my middle child. He was in baseball, and I'm sitting off to this side because I'm around people all the time. So when I go to games and stuff, I would really just sit off to the side on a blanket, and just hang out over there. And he came over, and he was like practically in tears. He's, Mom, he's like, these boys are talking about you and they're calling you a prostitute. And I go, do you even know what that is? I mean, he's like 10 or 11, something like that. And he's like, no. So I told him what it was. And I said, well, here's what I want you to do. I said, because I already know what just happened. So I said, I want you to go back there and wait till all the moms and dads, because they all get together in a little group afterwards. And I said, I want you to walk up to the boys that said that to you and said, how do you know that my mom's a prostitute? And that's exactly what he did. And they all looked at him and it's like, you wouldn't know anything about my mom if your dad didn't go to my mom's club. I went, boom. Yep. I was like, no way. You are not going to do that to my child. And if you're going to call him out on someone you don't even know, I'm calling you out on your stuff. Because you would not know anything about me had you not walked into my club. Because I never told anybody where I worked ever. So it was a great moment. I loved it. And then ever since after that, people would ask my kids. So this is what we talk about, lies. So anytime after that, when anybody asked my kids where I worked, I just tell them your mom works at a club downtown. And that if they ask which one, just tell them to walk around until they figure it out. I go, you do not have to tell them what your mom does for a living or where they work. And that's really how that all got started.
I love that, Shelly. I love that way of, people who spread lies, right? Not lies, right? Because it was the truth, right? But you're going to shame me, but can you look at yourself? So I love that you gave that power to your kid because, yeah, our kids only know what they're told, right? And so how do you know, right? I'm sure your kid didn't go into that club, right? And I've never shared it. Yeah. It never shared it. So I love that. And that is the best way to clap back, I guess what you call it, and negativity about people who don't know. Like sometimes I learned to just be quiet. Like I know who I am. And if you're not willing to ask me or even like doesn't even resonate with who I am, you don't even know me. It's not worth my breath. But there are moments like with yours, there are moments that we've experienced in personal or in business where, someone's now who was all in for your group or your team or your business was all like rah, 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 something happened and they're not owning, right? They're not owning their truth. So that dad obviously wasn't owning his truth, right? If he's spreading these words and all this negative, like if you're so negative and thinking so X, Y, and Z about what I'm doing, what are you doing here?
Exactly. Like there's another piece.
Yeah. So let's like own your truth, right? And so when we own our truth, whatever that is, no one can say crap about it, right? And it also goes to like, so your purpose was, Shelly, you did have a purpose. I too didn't grow up with people with money or going to college. That was my escape. And I actually, in my 30s, Shelly, is when I learned that both homes I grew up with were in domestic violence. It wasn't just parents fighting, guns, throats, like punching. That's not arguing, right? That's domestic violence. But we all have a purpose, whether we know in that moment or not. Like your drive at the end of the day was money. I get to support my kids independent. I'm a single mom, and someone told me recently, solo mom. So if you're a solo mom with no other thing, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna learn this. So I'm a solo mom. So we do what we need to do, right? And because and it's also what is taught in churches, right? Oh, they're a prostitute of this. So it goes layers and layers and layers. And a lot of times, if the person's not harming anyone, this is my belief. If the person is not harming anyone by doing what they're doing, they're not abusing anyone, they're not taking advantage of anyone, like a predator, let's say, right? Let them be, right? It's most likely the people who have something to say about it is because they're hiding something within them or they're holding back on who they are, right?
Absolutely.
So it's really always about that negativity. It's something about them, but it's hard in the moment to think, and to believe that and lean into that. So I'm loving that you're sharing that, because we have to break the stigmas. And as we talk about it, we start breaking that down. Like, don't judge unless you know. You definitely don't have skeletons in your closet. I mean, you definitely do have skeletons in your closet. Well, right? So let's just be real here.
Yes.
So,
and I want to share a story, because right before the world shut down, I went to a strip club with a group of guys, because they're like, you'll never go. I said, oh, don't threaten me with a good time. So I went, I went with them, and all the women would get ready, in the bathroom, and I had to go use the bathroom. And when I went in, I noticed this one girl, and I just picked up on a sense of like, I don't know if she wasn't feeling good about herself, or she felt, I don't know. But I walked up to her and I just said, you look beautiful. I love your makeup and I love what you're wearing. And she just looked at me, and I could see her just lighten up. And for me, I was like, they're people, and they're going to go through the same self-doubt that we go through. They're going to have their struggles as we do. And I went out of that bathroom, just feeling like, relieved that in that moment when I could see in her face the stress, and like that she just brightened up. And about 15, not even 15 minutes later, I go back out and I sit down. I had purposely been sitting in a corner where nobody could be near me. Well, the chair was left, and the guys thought it would be funny, and I got a lap dance. So I had the full-on experience. And, like when the lady was finished, I was just like, you're a great dancer. She was a great dancer. And I just was like, I saw a different side of it that broke my stigma right, in that moment, in that experience. Anything that I had been told or whatever before, in that experience, being in the bathroom with these women and then having a lap dance totally broke every stigma that I had heard growing up, and everything that I had been told. So I am glad that you're bringing this to light, and real, making people aware of the fact that we don't know what these women are going through, and we don't know what they're supporting. And the fact that you were doing this job, but you were able to be present for your kids. Not a lot of moms have that option when they're a solo mom or a single mom. So you found a way to support them, not only financially, but the emotional, and being a mom and being where you needed to be to be there and be present in their life, and not miss out on the little things that, had you had a typical 9-to-5 job, you would have had to miss out. So I'm very happy for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I love that. It's a lot of these. I've been around to family members, right, who've come to this country and were ridiculed for what country they were in, or what country they weren't from. And then the same people I've witnessed in my lifetime who were being treated badly, was not looked at as equal, were now passing that on to someone else that they felt that they weren't equal. And I actually asked this person, how can you treat this person this way when you've experienced that, and you still talk about the damage of that? Oh, because I want to, right? I say that because a lot of times, if you're not living the white picket fence, married with 2 kids, working in the corporate job, like, you're like, oh my goodness, you are the devil, or like, you are the black sheep, and you're doing all these things. And at the end of the day, a lot of us are surviving, right? Even those marriages, let's say, that are, oh my God, it's perfect, right? When you get inside, not all the time, it's a crap show, right? So, and I see a lot of these, and they're churchgoers, right? Not all, right? Nothing is all inclusive, not all communities, right? But I've seen a lot of those typical structured homes. I go to church every Sunday, are the worst critics on humans. But oh yeah, I believe in Christ. Everyone's equal, but like, shame on you. You can't do that. And it's like, it's this whole wacky world that we live in, that even, like, I could say in 2023, when we think mental health and mental awareness, it's so out there in these social streets. It's not though, because there's many communities that we still can't talk about it. We still don't talk about abuse. And it's women like us, women like you, Shelly, who are open to sharing. Because as we change and as we share, we change one person at a time, which changes the next person, right? So it's so important for us to have these conversations and stop judging people, right? If you're curious, ask the questions. And I say that a lot in my son's community. Just ask. Gone are the days, well, hopefully soon we can eradicate it, that we're just starting to stare at people or make opinions and assumptions. You have no idea. And it's so interesting. When I first said, I was having something, my first job in the corporate world, and my boss, that was the time when my brother was first diagnosed and I had to take time off and do all this stuff. And so I told that boss, and he's like, wow, I would never have told you. Don't look like you've been through that. So I'm like, of course I don't look like that, but it's that mindset that we have, right? He meant nothing by it, but wow, you don't look that way, right? And he doesn't know the whole backstory, but we have these assumptions based on how people show up, right? Or what they do, right? Like the typical, like, oh, you're a car salesman. Oh man, you're like selling the Brooklyn Bridge to everyone, right? It's these things that people like put into these categories, which is, we have to just stop it, right? Can we just try to see people for who they are or ask them a question? So I love that we're having this conversation. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Yeah,
We can
you
hear
froze
you.
on the last thing there. No. All right, I'm still here. I can't. Okay, there she's back. I can't hear you, girls. Low.
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, there you go. I can hear you now.
It's
You know,
the
so speaking of stigma, this whole church thing, right? So this is the whole other thing I grew up to with, Lutheran and just this, you know, like like God's punishing me. I'm like, what the heck? And I believed that for the longest time. And then as I started getting back into my faith and I had left my industry, I became very involved in my church. And I was on the Alcoholics Anonymous group that we had at our church. And I was also a fifth and sixth grade teacher and helped with our homeless situation. I got to help with our community and growing the feeding our starving children during the summer, right? So those are things too that people didn't know about me that were just that I absolutely loved. And I'm like, so when you find out that I was a stripper after you've already known all these other things, now how does that make you feel? Right? Because I'm like, I am a person. Again, it's what I did, it's not who I am. Like, I love doing all these other things. Now, I will say 12 years ago, my then husband, we'd been together for 18 years, had left me for a girlfriend in our group of friends during a period of time where we found out that my son, my firstborn, who I told you about that got paralyzed, was actually dying from kidney failure. And then my son then had died the day before his 30th birthday. And ironically, my son had always said he's going to be 29 and holding. And he was. He died the day before his 30th birthday. So I really find that really actually funny. And that was something that I hold on to because that was just something that he had always said. And then my middle son, who I told you about baseball, he ended up in prison for unintentional murder. He was at a party one night, and him and a bunch of people got into a fight, and this kid died as a result of it. And my son owned his stuff in it, and my son was the one that spent 9 years in prison for that. So while his brother was dying, and my husband had left, this one's sitting in prison. My daughter is pregnant with a little baby girl, and she ended up miscarrying and losing her little baby. And I found out that I had cancer and had to have a radical hysterectomy and appendectomy, and all this happened in an 8-month period of time. So we talk about getting the wind knocked out of my sails, like it literally took me to my knees. And I became so angry with God at that time that I walked away from my church. I walked away from my faith. I walked away from everything. And it has been recently that, when I look around and I see, people like Debbie in the groups that I'm in, and all these wonderful, amazing things are happening to people. I'm like, what is the one thing? What is everybody doing? And what I realized, the one thing that everybody has in common is their faith, and whatever their faith is, right? And ironically, I had left for a while to leave all of that, and I had went to Nashville, not even knowing that that was the Bible Belt of America. And I had met this guy and his family. Come to find out, he's a pastor of a church, and he's a retired chaplain of the police force in Alaska, and his niche market is grief. I'm like, what? Like, God literally had me sitting. I mean, if it was a Bible story, God literally had me sitting in this guy's pickup truck. We're on our way to a venue, and he's telling me that he is a grief counselor from the police force. I was like, you've got to be joking, right? It was definitely a God thing. And then I realized, so when you talk about that too, it's like, so if your faith, and we can go down a roll about this too, but I just want to bring it back to this for a minute, is that when we talk about our faith and going to church and all these Christians, so-called Christians, but can judge and criticize and ridicule, who the heck did Jesus run with? I was like, yes, Jesus ran with me, right? I'm the sinner. I'm the one who, God forbid for other people that, oh my gosh, she is a stripper. Like, shame, the shame. And I'm like, no, you know what? That's exactly who Jesus ran with. And I'm like, he chose me. And it's when I really hit that moment where I like believe that with all my heart, when everything else started to change. And so things have just been coming together and growing together, and I love it. And my faith is just becoming stronger and stronger. And I really just am excited about where things are going. Do my kids believe? No, they didn't grow up that way. But again, it's their journey too. All I can do is, just talk about where I'm going, and they can either believe or not. They get to choose, but they're adults. But one thing I do know is, again, I had talked about my grandbabies in the beginning, is I just want to be that person too in their lives that they can be proud of, that they can look up to. And their dad had overcame such great adversity, their Grammy, and their Nana, their mom, all of us. And there was a point when all that happened 12 years ago too, where I was ashamed, and I was so embarrassed. And I was like, people are talking about their kids going to school and college and all the things. And I got one in prison, one's, over here going through her own treatment stuff. And I got, my other one had passed away. My husband left me, and I'm like, what do I got?
I have a question for you. Talking about all, right? And let's, I want to ask you, so with all that stuff, so I know I think all of us, whoever's on this call too, have been in situations where like you feel like the world is crumbling around you. So I know a lot of that has to do with how are we looking at it and what's the mindset? What are we leaning into? But I also want to share, before you answer this question, is the people who believe in God and say that they're going to X someone, right? Or like God's gonna whatever to you, and he's not about love, that you're preaching the wrong thing about what God is, right? God knows who we are. God knows he's about love, and God's not gonna condemn me for something as long as I'm right. So it's kind of like two things battling each other. But I want to lean into, like, so when the world seemed like it's falling apart, right? A lot of it for me, in my experience, was mindset. A lot of it from a very young age. I didn't know it was mindset. That wasn't even a word that we used.
Yes.
But like at the end of the day, when I look back, it was a mindset. And I thought it was always that I just knew that I wanted to get out of this space, that this didn't seem normal, right? And it was clarified in my 20s when I started sharing it with some friends. They're like, that's not normal, right? And at the end of the day, what I really learned, it was God gave me inside me, not only that will or that gut feeling, was hope, right? There's hope for something better than my current situation. And it was journaling for me. And I only realized in the last year how much journaling saved my life, because me, when I write, it's taking these thoughts out of my head. I'm able to write down whatever stuff. And then for me, it just releases it out of my system. So I'd love to share Shelly and Debbie, when life hits you, right? And it's like, what in the heck? Like, God, are you kidding me? Or whoever you believe in, are you kidding me? How do you manage that? What are the tools that you use? Is it mindset? Is it like, what do you use? Let's share it so we can help others who are listening, who may be going through things that we've gone through or like experiencing things now. Like, how do we, let's share some tips.
Oh my gosh. So one of the things was I didn't even realize it either until recently is that I had already gone through my daughter was when I was 6 months pregnant with my daughter, I knew that I had not been drinking for a long time. And then I knew I was going to be a single mom. And again, people, this was 38 years ago. Okay. So do not condemn me. I was petrified to be a single mom of 3 kids because I knew that was happening. Like I had already had a divorce in the works and all that, blah, blah. And so so I started drinking at 6 months with my daughter. So when my daughter was born, I was like, "Oh no. Like I am not going to be my mom and my dad. Like that's not going to happen." So when my daughter was 3 months old, I had actually put my mom in treatment for gambling and I had gone to family week with my mom and realized that I needed to stop drinking. If that's how I really wanted to break the chain of poverty and domestic violence and alcoholism, all these things, I wanted to be that change. So when my mom got out of treatment, I went in for 30 days and I went through everything I went through built on the 12-step program. I just knew that it was one day, one step, one moment. Like it wasn't even about God at that time. It was using the 12-step program. That was the tools that I was taught. And it guided me through every single phase, even up to now. My hashtag is life does begin again. I fully still believe in that it's one day, 1 minute, one breath. Sometimes like you just got to take a breath, get into the next minute, when it turns into 5 minutes turns into 10 minutes turn into 30 minutes, 30 minutes into an hour. Next thing you know, it's 24 hours a day. And you can absolutely say without a doubt, oh my God, I did that. And I went through all of what I went through without drinking or drugs. And I didn't even really realize that until just recently. And I was like, man, I'm a badass. Like, who does that? You know? So that was really a great moment for me. So I'm like, there are really, really big things that I went through. And I did get through that without, self-medicating. And that's another thing too, just so y'all know too, that, 17 and a half years, I worked at that club. I won't get into this story, but I drank once for 3 days. I literally wanted to, it was a moment where I didn't take that 3 days and go, oh God, I got to start all over again in my sobriety. I was like, no, we're going to keep moving forward. But that was a lesson to me that I was never going to allow somebody to ever put me in that low of a position ever again, that I couldn't get through what I needed to. I never drank or did drugs at work either. So I got through this whole life experience without drinking or drugs. And I just want people to know that they too can do that very thing. So that's my take on that.
I think,
Debbie.
yeah, I think for me, getting through any situation, I have to find something that will distract me, and whether it be like a hobby or something like that. But definitely writing has helped me a lot. I've written a lot of letters that have never been sent, but just to get them out of my brain and get them out of my head, out of my brain, out of my feelings, because I write it out, how I'm feeling, what I want to say, just getting it out on the paper. So for me, that's been a big help to get through the situations that I need to get through. And also taking the time to just take a step back and reflect and wait before you react or respond. I think that that's been a huge, huge thing for me. So that would be my tip is, take the time, reflect before you react and respond.
Thank you for that one, because I'm still working on that even. Like I am a reactor. So it's really easy for me to be like, oh, but that's that mama in me too. Like, you know what, you come after me or my kids, like, no, that's not gonna happen. Like I am like full on mama bear. And I've really been learning to step back because I look back at my kids, how badly I've embarrassed my kids, too sometimes. And I'd be like, I just shun off their emotions and be like, mom's got this. Like, no, mom, don't do that. And I'm like, yeah, I am. And now it's like, okay, it's the same thing. I had to step back and really like Okay. And that I think too, Mary Kim, that comes, too with, like you said, I didn't know that was domestic violence either. I thought that was just the way it was in my house too. And, so, and we do just learn to step up but that's what I saw too. And so that was just really ingrained, but I'm really, really learning to really try to working on that. So I'm still a work in progress in that whole thing, but
Yeah.
it's coming
I
together.
just want to jump back to something that you said with your faith. And I actually had this conversation with one of my friends a couple weeks ago because she said to me, "Why did God make me this way?" And I said, "Well, with me anxiety because God knew that I could handle it and I would take my story and I would help others. And I believe, Shelly, that God put you through that and you went that route that you did because you are the one that's going to change the way people think about the industry and you are going to help others that are in it to realize that this is not who you are, it's just what you do."
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I came that realization too. And again, that's been within the last, year, actually 6 months when I really realized that too. I was like, yeah. And again, it's not what he did to me, it's what he did for me. That's like when I found out I had cancer. Like I never would have known I had cancer had my then husband left me. Like I would never have went to the doctor and got a wellness checkup. I was actually going down to Florida to meet a guy. And I was like, I just wanted to make sure I was safe. And so I went and got a physical. And that's exactly what happened. And she called me on my vacation down there and she's like, I hate to give you this bad news, but you need to get back here. You need to get back now. And I was like, what? And that's how I found out I had cancer. So had my husband not left me, and she told me I would have been dead within a year. So there was like the biggest blessing in all of that. Like it was a huge blessing. I won't tell him that, but I'm telling you that.
That's what I've learned in life, Debbie. What you shared about not that everything that we've gone through is not really for us. Like whoever's able to get through it and muscle through it and be able to get the lesson, the blessing, and the gift from that, because it's not for ours to keep. And I learned that in my mid-30s, and it was like an aha moment for me. Like, because I kept asking God, like, really, haven't I had enough? And it was this moment where I was helping a friend go through something I went through, and it hit me like, I get it now. Do I still question him? Yes. I'm like, seriously, but he knows me, right? I'm not criticizing him. He knows my sense of humor, my lack of like, really, but I know there's a reason. And like you said, Shelly, things happen in the way it's supposed to happen, right? But we also, as we're learning, right, we are a work in progress. I don't care if you make $1 zillion, if you're a billionaire, living the life of your dreams. We all are a work in progress. And the moment you kind of lean into who you are and get to know you better and self-reflection, right, empowers you so much that you get to know yourself more. And it's never too late, right? So anyone that's listening, it's never too late, no matter what you've gone through. And nobody, and I think the message here has been clear with the whole conversation, no one can tell you who you are, right? Once you know who you are. And as long as you're living life in a positive way, right? Even if it doesn't resonate with your neighbor and you're not harming anyone, but you're doing things to support your family, you're doing other things, you don't need validation from them, right? Whoever you believe in, right? Whatever you subscribe to, universe, God, whoever that is, right? Whoever you believe your creator is, they already validated you. And the reason why you have those dreams and that hopes and those drives and those missions and all those things is because those are yours to keep. And the last thing I want to share is that what makes you unique than anyone else, right, is we all have our own fingerprint. That gives you enough validation that everything that you do, everything that you want is yours, right? As long as you're leading in a positive way to give back, to do your best every day, better than yesterday, and continue to learn and give yourself grace. But those are the things I'm going to share, because so much I've learned, even myself, I'm the worst critic in my head if I allow my brain to continue to stew its way to tell me not to do something, right? And I have to circle back and remind myself of the things that I've done in my life, not my work resume, but my life resume. So Shelly, I want you to start writing those things down, and it's helped me like make a list of all the things that you've overcome in your life. So when you have those doubts, and anyone that's listening, because it's helped me in 2020, just go back to read it. And when you're going through a situation, you're like, I've done all this. And Shelly, you share that, like, wait a second, I've got this, right? But sometimes we forget because we've lived it, right? But in those moments, we're like, again, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Oh, here's my list. Oh, I got this.
And, you know, I like to say that I'm a perfectly imperfect work in progress.
Absolutely. And I live by now to my pastor. When I walked away from my church, he still communicates with me. I just love him so much. And when I walked away from everything, he just said, Shelly, you're in your Job moment. And I said, a what? And he said, your Job moment. And he's like, go look it up in the Bible. So I went and read it, and it made me mad. I do not believe like Job. I'm not Job. You know, I was like, whatever. And now I tell you that is my Job moment. And this is the moment where God is blessing me for everything and everything that has happened. And I am that test to that testimony. And I am loving it. I love it. Cannot wait to keep going out and sharing. I just want to thank you all both so much for having me here and sharing this today. And I truly believe that those women and men out there can definitely be heroes of their own stories.
I love it. Thank you again, Shelly. Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, so I can be reached, and you ladies can chime in anywhere on MaryKim Farkas. If you want to also come and be our special guest, we host this every Monday at 11. Just reach out to myself or Debbie. And yeah, let's stay connected. And so Shelly, then Debbie can close us out.
All right. And for me too, everything on my social is Shelly Jean, SHELLYJEAN. My website is www.shellyjean.com. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, right here with you ladies on the Mom Link, right here on LinkedIn. And thank you again so much. I look forward to hearing from people. You can come and ask me any questions you want. To be more than happy to answer.
And I can be found on all social medias as Debbie D. Waba. So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. What else am I on? LinkedIn. So I'm all over the place. You'll find, and my YouTube channel. So I'm everywhere as Debbie D. Waba. So I just want to thank everybody today. And thank you so much, Shelly. You have been an amazing guest. The conversation was so good. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week at 11. So have a great day.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.